Good morning. I'd like to call the County Board meeting for November 9th to order. Today's invocation is from Antonio Carrico.
Even if we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit, help us to listen politely as others share their points of view, help us to work as a unified team and combining ideas for a greater outcome. May we have a spirit of friendship in this room and work together on our shared mission. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes. Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear. Present. Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters. Present. Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Dunhill.
Present.
Miller.
Present.
Mr. Long.
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Present.
Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan. Mr. Collins. Ms. Hudson.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand.
Present.
Mr. Gowler. Mr. Raymond.
Present.
Ms. Foster.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Alrighty, under public commentary today, with the microphone in the back, is Michael Bryan from Kankakee.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Michael Bryan. I reside at 895 Cobb Boulevard here in Kankakee. I'm here today in support of the Heritage Prairie project that we'll hear more about later in the meeting. I work at a local bank in the branch here in Kankakee. We also have offices in Herscher and Dwight in the vicinity of this project, and can see firsthand the economic impact it will have in the entire community, but especially in that area, helping local businesses as well as the owners of the land. It will also provide essential additional revenue to local taxing bodies there, those that provide fire protection and schools and all the other taxing bodies. So for a variety of reasons, I think this is a great project. Thank you very much.
Next up is Terry Janowski from Chicago. Oh, Tony, sorry. You could read that from there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Janowski. I'm with the Mid-America Carpenters Regional Council. We represent 52,000 members, entire state of Illinois, and we have a local Carpenters 174 that represents. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Represents 2,400 members in the Will County, Kankakee, and surrounding areas. I'm here on behalf of the project, the Heritage Creek Solar Project that there's already been 3 meetings on. Carpenters Union are all about clean energy, renewable, nuclear, and wind projects. We do support the project. I think it was put together rather well by the team as far as the economic developments and everything that it could do for the benefit. But there is one portion of that project that was proposed, and that is the project labor agreement that is incorporated in this project. It is called the Tri-Trade MOU agreement that has been entered back in July by ConnectGen and the Tri-Trade parties, which is 3 labor organizations. The reason why I bring that up is to go back. I'm, not only with the Carpenters, but I'm also a representative, executive board member of Climate Jobs Illinois, with 11 other labor organizations representing 100,000 members that push the Climate Jobs Illinois energy bill. And with that was to have strong labor standards in there from prevailing wage, project labor agreements, the inclusion of a diverse, equitable workforce, leaving nobody behind. And with this tri-trade agreement that is being incorporated, it basically restricts, denies, and discriminates against certain, including the carpenters and other trade organizations, from participating. So we would ask that the board consider having an obligation to the community to have the developer go back in good faith, negotiate a project labor agreement so nobody's left behind from underrepresented communities, disadvantaged communities, our veterans. These are members also as the carpenters as well. And then we're really, the diversity equity piece of this. We have 2,000 apprentices, and we're proud to say we have a minority participation of 51%. So we're very proud to make sure that we're doing, our deed and our faith and whatever we can do to enter individuals into the apprentice program from these communities, leaving nobody behind. So we would ask again that we do support the project, not in its entirety until we can have inclusion of all the trades and any other entities. Even we have the Kankakee College that we have members that have taken training over there that are now being incorporated as first-year apprentice that will be denied employment on this project, and it's discriminating on it. So we ask again to consider the developer going back and entering into a project labor agreement that works for all trades. There is a project labor agreement that does work for all trades. It's called the NMAPC. We have a project, and that's what it does, though. It incorporates everybody from the community. We want to make sure that we are not limiting resources of workers for these projects, so we're not getting out-of-state travelers as a secondary. So this can't be done successful. It's for the good of the order. It's for the well-being of the community. And thank you very much for your time.
And next is Tim Nugent from Manteno.
Good morning. My name is Tim Nugent from representing the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County. I'm here to speak in behalf of the Heritage Project on the east or western end of Kankakee County, the renewable project that was already spoken about. The Economic Alliance is in full support of this project, creating new jobs, bringing new revenue into Kankakee County, new investment. The projects like this, are very important. We're bringing outside dollars into the county, creating construction jobs for a 1.5 or 2-year period, and then permanent jobs for the community. The investment that they're going to make is going to have impact on all the different taxing bodies throughout the region, including the county, but more importantly for the Herscher School District and all the other schools that are in that vicinity. They're going to find that they're going to have millions of dollars that will be generated over the course of the next couple decades as a result of this project. So we're here in favor of this project and speak on their behalf and hope that the board will approve the item that's on the agenda for the project today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have no more public commentary? No vacancy or appointments? We do have a presentation today. If we could get this read into the record, and then we could have a motion after that.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, calling for the suspension of the Safety Act implementation.
We'll
read the whole thing?
The whole thing, please. Yeah.
Whereas Kankakee County's mission is to provide services that ensure a high quality of life, sound fiscal management, and a dynamic business environment while creating an inclusive community that values diversity. And whereas providing a safe and secure community for all Kankakee County residents and businesses is a primary focus for the county. And whereas Kankakee County Sheriff Mike Downey has been a leader in police training, policy, practice, accountability, and transparency. And whereas Kankakee County State's Attorney Jim Rowe has been a statewide leader in the effort to understand the implications of the law and the unintended consequences and impacts arising from its implementation. And whereas the county values public engagement and stakeholder involvement to ensure all perspectives are considered in the development of legislation. And whereas on February 22nd, 2021, the Illinois Safety, Fairness, and Equity Today Act, SAFETY Act, was signed into law, which imposes significant changes impacting many aspects of the criminal justice system, including pre-arrest diversion, policing, pre-trial, sentencing, and connections. And whereas the county supports certain elements of the SAFETY Act and has already implemented elements including police body cameras and use of force training. And whereas the SAFETY Act contains several elements that impact the ability for the county to most effectively provide police services, including but not limited to unreasonably limiting the imposition of cash bail, unreasonably limiting police officer discretion to make arrests, restricting the authority of the judiciary, unreasonable timetables to trial, 90 days, imposing unreasonable police certification and decertification standards, and mandating unreasonable custodial accommodations. And whereas the Safety Act as designed will add cost and make our communities less safe, and will have a profoundly negative impact in communities of color via migration of business and property devaluation. Now therefore be it resolved by the Chairman and County Board of Kankakee County as follows. The Kankakee County Board encourages the suspension of implementation of the Safety Act until such time legislators work with public safety representatives and all community stakeholders to fix substantial problems with the Safety Act, including but not limited to unreasonably limiting the imposition of cash bail, unreasonably limiting police officer discretion to make arrests, imposing unreasonable police certification and decertification standards, and mandating unreasonable custodial accommodations. This resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approval.
Thank you, and I believe it's 2022, correct? That was past February 10th. It looks like a typo to me. It hasn't been that long. It's been a nuisance on our, or more like a pox on our society. But anyway, is there a motion to approve this one? Mr. Eckhoff is second, Mr. Tholen. This was brought forward to executive. It was pieced together and customized for our purposes here, but it was made from other counties that had done this in a bipartisan manner, and municipalities, by the way, too. So this wasn't just one viewpoint of a political stance versus another. This was based on a joint groundswell of people who want to see this law adjusted and fixed. Obviously, our state's attorney has a different opinion that it's unconstitutional, therefore you can't fix something that's unconstitutional. Ours is, we're basically saying we should stop on this until this is all determined, because you can't piece this together. Let's figure it out and get the real experts in the room, which is law enforcement and prosecutors. So if there's any additions, please suggest them. It was just a start. We didn't have any changes in executive. It's really up to the board if this is the verbiage you want to put forward. So with that, is there any thoughts, questions, comments? Mr. Snipes.
Well, I understand that there are some concerns with the Safety Act. There are good things that's in the Safety Act, which is body cam. There are trailer bills that are being addressed and attached, as with any piece of legislation that goes forward. We do understand that there are some concerns, but at no time should we basically throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think the state of Illinois, for one, I don't believe that we have the jurisdiction other than just to make a resolution to make noise versus working through our state senators and our state representatives, of which we have 6 in Kankakee County. So to do that would be, it's just like jumping the gun into the wrong direction. I think with the trailer bills that are being implemented, that is the way. There's a process that we follow in order to correct laws. And if we are going to just jump out and say, let's trash the Safety Act and we're not going to follow it, what jurisdiction do we have? We are a county. We are governed by the laws of the state of Illinois. At least you all took an oath to that matter. So therefore, what are you doing here? What purpose other than just having a document out there do you have to basically try to amend or stop or suggest that you're not going to follow laws that are up on the books? That I don't think we have that power or that jurisdiction. I believe that we need to utilize the system that's in place with the trailer bills, reach out to our state reps and our senators in order to, and the governor need be, in order to basically put the trailer bills in place to amend the law so that it'll be conducive. There are good things in the law, so I'm not going to throw it out. So I would have to vote no on this resolution.
All right, is there anybody else? Mr. Eckhoff, please.
From my understanding of this resolution, it would go ahead and just pretty much state that we don't agree with portions of this bill and that we want to go ahead and try to go ahead and make it better. So that's my understanding of what we're going to go ahead and vote on here. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All righty, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Roll call.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Nay.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Nay.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We have a couple of proclamations. The first one, a long one. You guys will read in the record, Mr. Hunter?
Yes, please.
Yes, entirety. Thank you.
Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, honoring Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church on the occasion of its 120th anniversary, celebrating the first independent church for African American worshipers in Kankakee. Whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church was organized under the Reverend J.A. Reeves in 1902 as a member of the Chicago District of the Missouri Annual Conference of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church at 900 South Dearborn Avenue as the first independent church for African American worshipers in the city of Kankakee. And whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church moved to North Evergreen and Willow Street under the leadership of Reverend H.P. Perry in 1922 as the members carried the old church stove to the new building with the fire burning within. And whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion's old church was completed by the Reverend Dr. Frederick D. Porter, with the parsonage added by the Reverend Christopher C. Nobles. And whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church served as the first home of the Kankakee branch of the NAACP and the Franklin Elementary School PTO, both under the leadership of Reverend John T. Frazier. Whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church has been ably served by Reverend Benjamin O. Berry, Reverend E.D.W. Strong, Reverend Nathan N. Richmond Sr., who served for 27 years, Dr. Lem D. Callahan, and in 2005, Reverend Robert Harwell Jr., who became the bridge from the past and a step into the future. And whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church welcomed the Reverend Lori K. Holmes, a student, teacher, principal, and in December 2022, a doctor, as the first woman pastor in June 2009. And whereas Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church has been a beacon of faith, charity, learning, and worship for 120 years of service to the people of Kankakee County. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Kankakee County Board greatly appreciates the many contributions to the fabric of the county of Kankakee made by Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church, and proclaims that November 2022 shall be Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church Month in the county of Kankakee.
All righty. Mr. Hunter with the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I make this motion, I just want to thank John Coughlin and Chris and Kelly Bilak for their assistance in drafting this particular proclamation and the concurrence of the chairman, Chairman Wheeler. Therefore, I move to approve this resolution.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Polk, thank you so much. Any other comments about the resolution? All righty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up, we have another one. If we could read that one to the record, please.
Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, honoring Langlois Roofing Company for 60 years of operation in Kankakee County. Whereas Langlois Roofing Company commenced operations in 1962, led by George Langlois after his return from serving in the military. And whereas Langlois Roofing Company was a residential roofing company for its first 27 years of operation, until Rendy Langlois took over operations from his father in 1979. And whereas Langlois Roofing Company has evolved from a regional company into one that operates throughout the Midwest and other parts of the country. And whereas Langlois Roofing Company is the premier commercial roofing company in Kankakee County. And whereas Langlois Roofing Company has completed projects at the Kankakee County Courthouse, Kankakee County Administrative Building, St. Mary's Hospital, Riverside Hospital, and the Air Traffic Control Tower at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, Illinois. And whereas Langlois Roofing Company has grown to a company generating $7 to $10 million per year. And whereas Langlois Roofing Company is the only union roofing company in Kankakee County. Whereas Langlois Roofing Company is now a third-generation family business. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Kankakee County Board greatly appreciates the growth and contribution to Kankakee County made by Langlois Roofing Company, and proclaims November 9, 2022 as Langlois Roofing Company Day in Kankakee County.
We have a motion. Mr. Eckhoff, second. Ms. Peters, any comments? I can tell you that they are continually the low bidder on a lot of projects here, and they do excellent work. Ms. Peters, but I'll get you in just a second. I will say it's a pleasure to know this company. They do great work for us and other communities, and they give us great value. So, Ms. Peters, please.
Yes, I just wanted to thank them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thank them for carrying us when we were way behind in our bills, and they were very patient, and they kept coming out to fix leaks. So, very wonderful company.
You're correct. About 2015, they became the Langlois Bank for Kankakee County. So that's as a lot of people were back then, that's for sure. Mr. Long, please.
And also just to add, he's very philanthropic with some of our local things like Harbor House, and we're very thankful for that.
Oh yeah, and Teresa and St. Teresa and everything over there. So, no, I appreciate that. So we have a motion and a second, I believe. Correct? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you and congratulations. Would you like to come up, Randy and family? He's in the back, please.
Mr. Chairman, County Board.
Let me turn it on real quick. Hold on a minute.
Gotcha.
I'm slipping in my duties.
Hey, Mr. Chairman and County Board members, thank you very much for this proclamation. It's unexpected, but very, very heartfelt gratitude with it. So my son, Randy, will be taking over the company. I retired January 1, 2023. Don't know what I'm gonna do after running this thing for 43 years, but we're gonna give it a shot. My wife, Wendy, and my daughter-in-law, Michelle. So thank you very much. It is very much appreciated.
Thank you. All righty, moving on here. We have, let's see here, certificates of appreciation. Got a few of them. Eric Cavender from the coroner's office, 10 years. He's here. And he is here. Yes. Great. You want to come up, or do you just want to wait until Bob's here and do something? By the way, the county coroner today is Dan Hendrickson, so we're going to get you a different one of these because he signed it in the right spot. So he has to be officially elected in order to do that. So we'll get you another one. The next one is Danielle, is it Connick from the State's Attorney's Office? 10 years. Eric Senesac from Corrections, 15 years. Renee Wishen from Probation, 15. Robert Lowy from the Sheriff's Department, 20 years. And 35 years, James Lamore from the Highway Department. Thank you all for your service so much. And most of those people were here through good times and bad times, because it always is like the wave. Minutes last meeting, October 11th. Is there a motion to approve on that? Mr. Smith, a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let's see here. Claims Committee reports.
Mr. Chairman, members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants in the total amount of $11,121,864.32.
All right. Is there a motion there? Mr. Dunhill, second. By the way, welcome back. Ms. Parker, roll call vote.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond. Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports, if we can get those read in the record, please.
County Collector's Monthly Report for September 2022, total cash and bank and investments of $48,537,223.73. County Treasurer's Monthly Report for September 2022, in the tax operating account at First American Bank, ending balance of $48,208,995.22. At the tax collection account at First American Bank, the ending balance of $279,271.08. At the tax e-pay account at First American Bank, the ending balance of $1,457.32. And Illinois funds at U.S. Bank, the ending balance of $47,500.11. Coroner's Monthly Report for September 2022, total calls of 113, coroner's cases 23, autopsies 10, toxicology 12, 1 donation, 1 fetal, 55 hospice, 34 referral, 62 cremations, 3 x-rays, 1 outside x-ray, 10 pending. Coroner's Income Summary Report for September, total of $4,848.36. Circuit Clerk Cash Book for month ending September 2022, total disbursed of $258,299.93. Recorder's Monthly Report for September 2022, disbursement fees paid to the County Treasurer of $175,991.70. County Clerk's Monthly Report for September, total of $22,959.33. The Monthly Building Division Report for September 2022, total permits of 121, total fees of $47,532. The Animal Control Monthly Report for September 2022, total of $39,420. In the IPTIP Building Fund, $148.74. Total animals handled, 92. And the monthly resolution list for November 2022, total of the county of $256,061.95.
Is there a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Long, Mr. Fairfield, the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Under consent agenda, anything considered separately? First time. It's pretty standard. Second time. Is there a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Long, Mr. Alexander Hildebrand. I guess we should read them in the record probably.
The reappointment of Dennis Schaefer to the Baker Creek Drainage District, the reappointment of Stephen Engelking to the Kankakee River Conservancy District, the reappointment of Dennis J. O'Connor to the Gar Creek Drainage District, and declaration of surplus equipment for the Kankakee County Circuit Clerk's Office.
Alrighty, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Is it aye?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Now, if we can get, let's see, 219 read, just the title in the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman to sign an engineering agreement and appropriate county bridge funds to match a Janier Township Road District local funds to construct a bridge in Janier Township.
Alrighty, we have a motion on this one here. Mr. Carrico, I believe. Second, Mr. Donnell. Any questions on this one? It's pretty straightforward if you read the resolution. It's just dividing up the costs. No questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Let's get 220's title in the record, and then we can get a motion to get it going.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding ZBA case 22-01, special use permit, section 121-99.c.34, solar farm, in the A1 Agriculture District on parcels generally situated in northwest Kankakee County, east and south Essex, within Essex and Salina Townships, Heritage Prairie Solar, LLC.
Is there a motion to approve on this one? Mr. Eckhoff, Mr. Smith with a second to get it into discussion. And then presentation, Del?
Yes, if you load up the other one, it's got a sunflower on the front of it, I think.
Oh, isn't that pretty?
With the chairman's permission, I'd like the applicants to actually give the presentation.
Okay. It's very white.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, we're happy to present.
Please, okay. Just let us know we need to advance.
Great. Thanks, everybody. My name is John Kuba. I'm Director of Environmental Affairs for ConnectGen, one of the developers working on the Heritage Prairie Solar Project. Next slide, please. So the Heritage Prairie Solar Project is a joint venture between Pattern Energy Group and ConnectGen, bringing together two of the nation's leading renewable energy development groups to focus on developing, constructing, and operating this project here in Kankakee County. The JV brings together kind of two strong facets that are important to point out here. One, a strong development team bringing together groups that have decades of renewable development and operation construction experience, as well as extensive experience developing here in Illinois, and then ultimately resources that allow us the ability to execute on this project. Both Pattern and ConnectGen have various internal resources, including construction experience, operational asset management, environmental permitting, siting and design, and operational management. Next slide, please. So Heritage Prairie Solar is proposed 300 megawatt solar project. It's located on the western side of the county, just east of the village of Essex. The project area includes portions of Essex Township as well as a small bit of Salina Township on the western side of Salina. The reason that project area was selected was for a couple of reasons. One, a very important and solid solar resource in that part of the area. Two, compatible land use. The area is zoned as agricultural district, kind of poor agricultural land, good for generally good for development. And then three, close proximity to electric transmission infrastructure, very close to important load centers here in Kankakee and north central Illinois. The project area includes parcels that ultimately total up to a little over 3,700 acres. Now that parcel area, that's the area that was where we had negotiated with landowners, lease their land for development. The ultimate development area, the project footprint is a little over 1,600 acres. I mentioned the close location to a good point to interconnect to the grid. That is called the point of interconnection. The location here is where, the location where we're interconnecting is where two ComEd transmission lines cross. So there's, this project will ultimately connect to both of those. And we have existing interconnection queue positions for 150 megawatts each. So we will be able to ensure the full amount of this project, the full 300 megawatts, can interconnect with the grid. On the community outreach front, we've been around the area for quite some time, obviously actively in the field with various representatives, working with landowners, community officials, etc. We've held or continue to hold and maintain a project office in Herscher, and last December we held a public informational meeting for this project. Next slide, please. Just to touch on a few of the project benefits, I mean, this is a significant investment in Kankakee County. The project in total will be roughly $400 to $500 million development project. And that money that's put toward this infrastructure touches various facets of the community. I think it's important to note the job and revenue stream that this project brings, including over 150 full-time jobs here in Kankakee County during construction, 44 million in property tax revenue over the life of the project, and a little over 23 million in school district revenue from property taxes associated with Herscher and Reed school districts. Also, this project has worked with labor on a tri-trade MOU. That MOU includes the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, Labor's International Union of North America, LIUNA, and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. That MOU was signed in July, as you heard earlier today. Under that MOU, what it basically says is we have committed, Connection Pattern have committed to include those trades in any, or ensure that ultimately our engineering, procurement, and construction group, the general contractor that will be selected for this project, must include those trades in a project labor agreement. Now that project labor agreement does not preclude other trades from joining in. It just says we will ensure that at least those 3 trades are included. And then, most importantly, as part of that MOU, we are, committed to safe construction of this project using local resources, and that helps fulfill that commitment. Next slide, please. So, this slide touches on some of the design standards that were incorporated, and I won't go through all of them, but I'll touch on a couple of the high notes. One thing that I want to make sure I clarify is that this project has been designed to meet all facets of the county ordinance regarding solar development. So all the standards that the county has applied, we have met or exceeded those standards. And we are not asking for any variances for this project. We've designed it to accommodate the code without any changes or modifications. One common misconception is that we're laying a bunch of concrete. That's not true. This project will include steel pier foundations, not concrete foundations. They'll be driven into the ground between 8 to 12 feet in depth. We'll do some additional testing to confirm that depth, but wanted to clarify that's a very, very limited concrete on this project. Power and communication lines will be buried underground. That's consistent with the county ordinance, as well as our ag impact mitigation agreement. And there are certain standards, design standards for how deep we will bury, but the main interest there is to avoid impacts to agricultural operations, drainage patterns, etc. Height of the panels will be max height of around 7 feet. They'll be mounted at 4 feet. These will be a tilting panel, so they will kind of move with the sun during the day. When the sun's at the horizon, the max height of the panel will be around 7 feet. The other piece of infrastructure that we'll have in the solar array will be inverter locations, and they have a max height of around 10 feet. Setbacks are really critical when developing any type of infrastructure. In this case, we have met the county standards, which include a minimum 100-foot setback from the front of adjoining parcels. So that's the portion that is adjoining a road, and then 50 feet from all sides. The only exception is if there's a residential structure on a parcel. In that case, we have included a setback of 100 feet all the way around for all sides of that parcel. Fencing on this project, we are required to have an 8-foot security fence. There's multiple reasons, both national code standards, but also county requirements. In this case, we have incorporated an agricultural style fence, which kind of fits better with the agricultural community that we're in. Usually a lot more pleasing for landowners, and as we understand it, it's become more of a common condition that is required in Kankakee County now. So we have made that commitment upfront and part of this project. Screening, we have developed a landscape and veg management plan. If you have reviewed the very thick binder that you all probably saw about the project, there's a significant effort that went into developing screening in areas where there could be concerns with visibility of the project from a neighboring parcel or from a county road. So we incorporated over 11 miles of veg screening on this project. And that screening also will meet Illinois DNR standards for pollinator-friendly solar requirements. There will be no lights on the main portion of the project. The only area where there will be lights is the substation. That's required for safety reasons. Those lights will be downcast and shielded to not allow light trespass on neighboring parcels. And then on the sound front, solar projects are very quiet. We meet all the standards of the county level, 50 dBA at property lines, as well as the Illinois Pollution Control Board standards. I guess the last item on the design standards is, the design has been reviewed with the ZBA, and the ZBA did confirm through a 5-0 vote and recommendation to the board that we've met these standard requirements. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan, and I'll just kind of give some reference. The orange area are the panel blocks, so that's kind of the first thing that kind of this may call your attention to. The pink dashed line is the collection line routing, which strings together the power generated by the modules and bring those to the substation, which is a red box kind of in the central portion of the project area. And from that substation, we interconnect to the grid at the pink box. So a couple of items to note here. I mentioned earlier, although the land that we have leased and that we have studied for the project is over 3,700 acres, the actual development footprint is a little over 1,600 acres, which is about 44% of the larger project area. The way we sited these modules, we focus on kind of an opportunity and constraint-based siting approach, meaning we looked at all the environmental, engineering, land use considerations from this area, from that project area, and the land that we had leased as well as the surrounding land, and consider that as kind of where we can't site or where we don't think it's appropriate to site. And then we looked at the opportunities where our host landowners suggesting, hey, I want you to build in this area, I want to preserve this other area for farming. So those types of considerations help drive where we ultimately sited modules. Then I mentioned the over 11 miles of veg screening. It's hard to see with this map, but there's green lines that you'll see adjacent to county roads, adjacent to residential structures. That's the veg screening that we included as part of the project. The pink dash line, the buried collection line, has been all kind of consolidated. So from the southwest corner of the project area, heading east and then heading north, you see kind of one consolidated electric line route. There may be multiple circuits, but they're all kind of on one route to limit the overall ground disturbance associated with the project. And then lastly, there is a short gen tie line or generation tie line, which is a 345 kV electric line from our substation to the interconnection point. So from the red box to the pink box, for that 1 mile interconnection, we will bury a portion of that line due to an existing property nearby that is used for recreational purposes, and that helps minimize any potential impact to their recreational activity. Next slide, please. This slide is a kind of another overlay of the project area, but focus only on the module areas. So the blue boxes are those areas where we would site panels. And then an important thing to note here is that right now we're considering a Longi 540 watt panel. There's always a potential that we use a different panel. However, it will be the same quality. It will come from a tier 1 solar manufacturer. However, every panel has a little bit different design rating, and so the design of a different panel could result in minor micro siting of the panel arrays. If that were to happen, all the final design that we would present at building permit stage would fall within these module areas. So we would never, in this case, we were proposing to not change the module areas that we've shown you. If anything, we would reduce in certain areas. Next slide, and at this point, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Alan Wynn from Pattern.
Good morning. I'm Alan Wynn. I'm Environmental Director at Pattern Energy. I'm John's counterpart in the joint venture. John talked about how we study the site, we identify constraints, and then we work to avoid those constraints. And so just to point out some of the studies we do, we conducted a wetland delineation, cultural resources, threatened and endangered species, raptors. We conducted a sound analysis, a glare analysis, and prepared a landscape and vegetation management plan, as John talked about, that will dictate the pollinator-friendly planting scheme at the site, including the 60,000 linear feet of vegetation screening. Also, the County Soil and Water Conservation District prepared an NRI. Next slide, please. We've also consulted with various agencies about this project. We've met with the Illinois Department of Natural Resource. The project has also undergone their formal wildlife consultation through EcoCat. And again, the IDNR issued a recommendation letter in April of 21, which is in the binder with the SUP application. We've also met with the Fish and Wildlife Service to discuss this project, and the project will comply with all federal laws and regulations. Again, the NRI was prepared by the Kankakee County Soil and Water Conservation District. They issued a no opposition letter in January of 2022. We have a AMA executed in 2021 with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and we worked closely with the Kankakee County Planning Department as we were preparing our application. Next slide, please. I'll quickly point out a few things in the finding of facts. The project complies with Kankakee County Code. The project design adopts National Electric Code and other safety codes. And again, the project will contribute economic stimulus of 150 local jobs during construction, 44 million in property tax, 23.8 million in school district tax. This project would meet the equivalent needs of nearly 61,000 American homes annually in production of electricity. Character of the neighborhood, solar has been contemplated as a suitable use in an agriculture district as demonstrated by the ordinance. This project meets the spirit of the 2030 comprehensive plan, and we've worked with landowners to maintain certain areas for agricultural production or to leave trees and other natural resources in place. We will be implementing an agricultural style fence and native screening to retain the existing characteristic of the community. And again, the AMA commitments will allow for cultivation, from cultivation preserves the long-term economic and agricultural use of the project. Next slide, please. Couple other things. No direct physical impacts to any adjacent properties. The project operation will meet Illinois Pollution Control Board and Kankakee County sound standards. Traffic control plan will be developed with the Kankakee County Highway Department. Road use agreements with the townships and county will ensure that the roads are repaired to pre-construction conditions. And the project complies with all applicable zoning regulations and standards as required for the issuance of the SUP. Next slide. This is just a quick schedule of timing of activities. Proposing a construction start March of 2024. That will be site preparation and civil work, and then the various tasks that need to be in the tracker installation, the inverters, the AC, electrical, the module installations, and then the decommissioning and plant cleanup about December of 2025 is the schedule at this point. Next slide, please. Decommissioning and restoration. Decommissioning obligations are largely governed by the project AMA and the individual lease terms in the property owner's contracts, as well as the county solar ordinance. Most materials are recyclable or largely constructed of recyclable materials. Any that aren't would be disposed of at the end of the project in a responsible manner. Land will be available for to put back into agricultural use as soon as the project is decommissioned. Next slide. We also hired a consultant, Cone Resnick, which is a property appraisal company, to look at property values at this project, and they've also looked at other property values at other similar counties where they have a solar project come into the county. They've concluded that there was no consistent negative impacts have occurred to adjacent properties that could be attributed to the proximity to an adjacent solar farm. The conclusion was confirmed by numerous county assessors, and the conclusion has also been confirmed in academic studies. And one of the things that they pointed out in their study is that stable and rising property values are usually tied closely to good schools. And again, this project will be injecting $23.8 million of tax revenue into the local school districts. And that's it.
All right. Del, you still here? Sorry. So that was all covered under the original ZBA and PZA presentations? There was no new testimony presented? Okay. Just want to make sure we're staying clear of that. Now, any other questions to clarify what was just said? Anything you need to know about? Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I understand from your maps the location of the site plan, but to clarify, what would be the southern boundary in terms of the east-west roads there?
Can you put the map
Could you
back
throw that
up?
back up there? I'm sorry. Okay.
Because I'm familiar with Essex, but not enough to recognize exactly where.
Oh, go back.
Southern Missouri.
6, 5, 4, 3. About 2.5. The southern boundary is between 2,000 north and 3,000 north.
Between 2,000 and 3,000. Thank you.
Mr. Seroy, you had a couple.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. I got a couple questions. What is the estimated life of the project?
I believe we assumed a roughly 35-year life of the project. I have to go back and double check the application, but it was roughly either 30 or 35 years.
Okay. And then secondly, what was the average acre price lease for the land?
So we wouldn't have included.
No,
that was not covered under testimony.
No.
No.
Can't ask that question?
It wasn't under testimony originally presented.
Okay,
It's
then.
new evidence others haven't considered.
All right, question number 3 is, I heard during the public comment, people saying there were full-time jobs. Are there full-time jobs involved in this project?
Yes, that's correct. I think we assumed as part of the operation, there would be at least 2 full-time employees that would be essentially operating the project. Now that doesn't include like the full-time equivalents associated with the larger study analysis and the impacts of bringing that project to the community.
Okay, so 2 full-time jobs for 35 years is what I'm thinking.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Long? I'm sorry, were you raising your hand?
Comment?
Sure.
So thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. And I'm not always the friend of the solar because I believe that farming should be first and foremost, but your presentation is wonderful. It helps me understand better what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm pretty impressed with the landscape and vegetation management plan so that the rest of us can kind of live with what you're doing. And the other thing is the buried portion of the collection of the energy, so we don't have to farm around it. We're not worried about getting underneath the wires or running into it with a combine or something like that, but nice presentation. I think we should look in the future possibly as this project goes forward to maybe have this be our standard going forward for other projects, that the presentations be at this level, and definitely the landscape plans and the fencing seems pleasant. I think all of those things are good things to maybe help some of us that aren't quite as pro to live with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to clarify, it is in line with our current landscaping plan, but it seems to me you're saying this goes a little above and beyond.
I do say that.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. And you're thinking we should codify that in an update maybe down the road. Those
Yes,
take
sir.
a while, but like 4 to 6 months, I believe, to run it through all the committees.
At
And,
least,
yeah,
yes.
but I hear what you're saying. We should take a look at that.
Our past performance maybe could be improved is what I'm saying.
There's ample examples of that. Mr.
Yes, there
Kirkstra.
is.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Yes, this is basically the same question, not just that I had at the ZBA meeting, but also this is another question that I had at another conference where you presented your program and the building of these projects, and I asked the same question. Are all certified and qualified workers and trades represented on this project? And have you spoke with them?
So start with the first one. So as I mentioned, we have a tri-trade MOU, which includes 3 separate trades. And I think if I'm going to interpret the question, there was, the question at the PZA committee meeting was around representation by the Carpenter Union. And at this time, the Carpenter Union is not part of the tri-trade MOU. But my response in the presentation regarding our MOU is that it involves those 3 trades that I mentioned. However, that MOU is a commitment that Connection and Pattern has made to enter in or to select an EPC company and a general contractor that then must ultimately go out and negotiate a project of labor agreement. So we don't have a project labor agreement at this time. However, at that time, that project labor agreement must include the 3 trades, but it also does not preclude other trades, including the Carpenter Union, from joining in that PLA at that time. To your second question about are there continued discussions with all trades? And right now there are still communication going on. I'm not privy to the specific communications with, for instance, the Carpenter Union, but there is a line of communication that's active.
I don't believe that's an answer to my question. The simple fact of the matter is we're talking about a trade that has installed these projects all around the country and including in the state. They are certified, qualified, and experienced, and also are bringing these certifications and qualifications to our community, to our residents in this community. There are people who live in this community that are going to be doing this. They are going to be benefiting this community by having that income here. And the greatest words that I can think of right now are Abraham Lincoln said, if we buy the rails from Britain, Britain gets our money. But if we build the rails here, we keep our money.
Any other thoughts?
My vote would be no on this. And I'm all for these projects. My vote would be no.
Mr. Snipes.
Thank you, Chairman. As a laborer, I listened to the public comments and I hear labor saying we agree. However, there are some things that we need to work out in the project. And so under MOUs, because I'm involved in those from time to time, are the doors open to continue to speak with that trade MOU to kind of enhance it, or are those conversations closed and obstacles being presented as hills of remedies that can't be resolved? If there's constant communication where you all are going to talk and continue to work out those concerns, especially with the ones like this at KCC, raising the individuals, having individuals in the community be a part of the jobs, are those talks precluded or are they just still a work in progress on the MOU?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think your question kind of piggybacks on the previous one, and I apologize if I wasn't clear, but I mean, the answer to the question is talks are still open and there's still opportunity. And ultimately, the project labor agreement is what identifies, which trades are going to be involved, how they're going to be involved, and ensuring certainty that there is involvement. And so the MOU it has been executed. It's final. At this point, we don't want to reopen that 6 months after we've signed it. However, what we continue to express is that the project labor agreement, there is definitely opportunity to bring in other trades if there's interest and opportunity for using those resources in that project labor agreement that would be negotiated between the EPC and labor. Yeah, the MOU. I mean, just for background on what the MOU, most projects we wouldn't have agreements at that early stage. At this stage, this is kind of the permitting stage, right? As we move to the EPC, that's when you really ramp up negotiation and coordination with different construction entities. The MOU just provides a starting point. This is kind of the baseline of what will be included in that PLA. It doesn't set the bar for what the PLA ultimately looks like.
So there is some activities for conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go ahead and echo what you just went ahead and said. That's why I wanted to go ahead and raise my hand for the question. But Delbert, aren't we just voting on giving them a special use permit? All this other stuff's non-existent with this vote, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
The question before you today is, does this project meet the standards set forth by the county for approval, and should it be approved? Labor agreements are a private agreement between the company and the labor unions and are not part of the standards set for
And we
approval.
just heard that they're ahead of schedule on that, so.
They're actually doing that.
Correct.
That's between them.
So
that is not
I just
part of
wanted
the
to state that for the rest of the board.
Any other thoughts? Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. Am I assuming roll call? Might as well. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess. Aye. Mr. Tholen. Aye. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
No.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond. Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Moving on, 221, please, the title and the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding ZBA case 22-14, special use permit 14, fertilizer sales in the A1 Agriculture District, and a variance to section 121-99.c.14 on parcels generally situated in Manteno Township.
Is there a motion on this one? Mr. Dono, Mr. Long with a second. Basically, it's just an expansion of the current facility, and that's all we have on that on the docket. Any other questions on that, though? It's pretty cut and dry. But safety's been covered, all that stuff. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favors, say aye.
Aye.
Those same sign, opposed. Motion carries. All right. Under finance, we just got a few small things to tackle here. Title of this one, read in the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the chairman of the Kankakee County Board to sign a collective bargaining agreement between the Kankakee County Coroner's Office and Laborers International Union of North America, Local 751.
All righty. Mr. Hess and Mr. Smith, who was the negotiating team on that, by the way? Mr. Lear, Mr. Long, and who's the other? Oh, Mr. Hess. Okay, just in case there's comment, I want to make sure I had the three on that. So you have the information in the packet. Anita was a big part of this, and obviously Eric is here as well. Is there any specific comments you want to make about the agreement, anybody, as far as the process, the outcome? The unions voted on it. Everything is, we're in front of the board here to approve it. Seems like we have an agreement. So is there any comments from the team? It was a little bit of a long process, but we got to where we needed to be, so. Alrighty, how about a roll call vote? Let's do that.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter. Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Budget. And let me get this ready here. I was just going to run through the refresher. Mr. Lear was on the Love Boat, I believe. You were somewhere on a cruise. All right, Captain Stubing. Sorry, I'm old.
Let me read it into record.
Yeah, we might want to do that.
Ordinance of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, combined annual budget and appropriation ordinance for Kankakee County, Illinois, 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Yeah, motion on that. Mr. Lear, second. We'll go with Ms. Weber, first time today. That wasn't a criticism, it was just the first time I called. So basically, real quick, I'll just go through some of the numbers here. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at this. This was on display the required amount of time. Total all funds, $105,764,000. That's all in your packet, but these are some highlights here. Now, of that, 36.2 is general fund, tort fund, 3.45, and pension fund 6.92 as far as next year's total budget. So we can flip to the next one. A little bit of a view of what has happened with the three major funds. Obviously, we're at historic high levels of our fund balances, way before the crash or way ahead of where we were at in 2008. Which allowed us to do some of these tax breaks that we're giving people down the road and paying off these bonds early to strengthen our financial position even further. So kind of gives you an idea of where we really started this in the 2017 budget year. We came up a little bit from 2016 to 27, but we really tackled it from that point forward. And if you look at the totals, far ahead of where we were. So these are just the numbers behind the graph. So it's $17.16 billion improvement in 6 years. That's kind of unheard of with the size budget we have. We talked about what all that affords us in terms of paying our vendors on time, which is a big one because we had a lot of banks in Kankakee County that were our local businesses, and that doesn't happen anymore. So moving on to the next slide. This is what the capital development side of it looks like, and that's where we're putting our bond payments for 23 and 24, if you see where that's at, if you can click it again. So those will manifest with those property tax cuts we talked about, if you click again. And then the jail bonds are paid off in 24, so really everything except for the animal control bond, which you may remember is supported by the fines and the fees, tags, everything out of animal control. Really all taxpayer supported bonding debt is going to be gone. So all that's left is animal control. That's why that 90% number's there, but really nobody's paying for that out of their pocket. That's all coming from their own funds. So if you could kind of flip again, and that's really the high level stuff of what we're doing. Now we can jump right into the budget here since we have a motion. Steve, are you, you're online here with us?
Yeah, I'm here, Andy.
Good, hope you're doing okay, bud. Page by page, obviously we can run through things. If anything you want to talk about, you got any questions, Steve is obviously on top of it. We've all been meeting on this, and we have a very solid approach to what we think may be coming, and really the unknowns we know are coming. It's a kind of a weird position. So we built a budget that is extremely conservative on revenue because we see its sales tax and use tax and everything going down, especially in a recession, which most are predicting coming this next year. How deep, we just don't know. So we're not expecting as much revenue, so we push that down, and we're controlling those expenses. So we still have a balanced budget, but it has a little bit of room in it to absorb, well, what's the Safety Act going to do to us in terms of revenue at the courthouse, which pays for the courthouse. If you don't have that revenue, then it's got to come from the taxpayers here locally. A lot of people don't really kind of realize that. And so we're going to see some changes. We just think we know what they're going to be, but really with so many question marks and potential trailer bills that don't exist yet, we hope they're going to fix some things, but we just don't know. The revenue side is what we're looking at right now. The policing and the prosecuting side is really another end of the pool that we have feelings about, but I would much rather defer to our law enforcement folks for their overall assessment there. So really, so if you're looking at the $36 million budget, you notice this year we're estimating a $2.8 roughly $1 million surplus in the budget, which allows us to do some of these things that we're talking about with taking care of the taxpayers here. So please, any questions? If it's real micro, we'll obviously, Steve will throw us a lifeline to help us out, but please, anything. Mr. Eckhoff.
In finance, I went ahead and mentioned Fund 380, and just for every board member, it's page 142 out of 178 on your iPad. It's the VAC. I just want to reiterate that I'm a little worried that they are going to go ahead and spend $340,000 more than what their budget is this upcoming year, and that'd leave their fund balance at $57,000. At the end of this year, they're projected just under $400,000. That's my only worry in this budget, but this is a conservative budget, a good budget, but I just want to make every board member aware of that one.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about the budget this year? It's about the best we could do to be able to roll with the punches that we see coming, or multiple punches, or maybe some Mike Tyson roundhouses that could come, October next year. So we just don't know. We ready for a roll call? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Aye. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And thanks for all your work on that, Steve, with your team, Anita as well. I didn't thank Anita for the contract stuff because she, and I should have, because she wades into that very deeply and is a great resource along with our legal help with that, Mike Kuzwara. And I think we got a good thing going there. And I think the labor unions are happy as well. All right, motion carries on that. So moving on, get to the next one.
24?
Yep, 24, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman or his designee to sign a renewal agreement with Alliant Mesereau Insurance for liability auto workers' compensation services for the County of Kankakee.
All righty, is there a motion on that one to start with? Mr. Fairfield, Ms. Parker with a second. Is there any highlights, Anita, you just want to mention to the group, or is it pretty self-explanatory? She was working on this one, so nice to catch you off guard. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Just overall, we came across, we ended up, after quite a bit of conversation with the insurance company, discussion regarding any concerns they have, we ended up with an increase of 8.9%. Our overall package that includes auto, property, liability, jail liability is included in that, work comp, the whole, and cyber, goes from 1.889 million to 2,056,000. So an 8.9% increase with inflation at about that. So that's about where we're at, flat. We got some grace from our work comp, which went down this year by 7%, largely due to claim history. So we got some help in that area to kind of offset increases in terms of liability and property values. I don't know if anyone wants anything else.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And just as a reminder to the board, we've instructed our broker to go to the market next year for these two insurances. And just talking a little bit about the industry, I would expect our liability to be something that, with the way the reinsurance market is going, pretty consistent with the value we've been getting, but I do think work comp may be something we could probably experience some savings in going forward. So we're gonna look at both of them though. We're just gonna go to the whole market. not a lot of people out there doing these things these days with government and liability and things. You might have heard of COVID, so it's been a challenge. So anyway, we're going to do that again. You have to check about every 3 to 5 years roughly on those markets just to make sure you're competitive. Moving on to, looks like ARPA stuff. Consent agenda. So if we could get the titles of these read into the record, please.
Authorizing expenditure from fiscal year 2022 Fund 95 for the following: Kankakee River Valley Forest Preserve District, River Valley Special Recreation Association, Limestone Township Library District, and for Fund 98 for the ICANN Regional Office of Education, and for an amending resolution 2022-0510-92, Kankakee Regional Land Bank to America Rescue Plan Lost Revenue Fund.
All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. Now, is there any of those, I should ask this first, any of those that should be pulled off when we consider second? Because it is a consent, we'll make the motion to combine and approve. I just want to make sure there's one if you want to talk about it separate.
29.
29. Okay. And Ms. Parker, did you have one?
No, I was going to make the motion to combine.
Okay. Well, motion to combine and approve except for 29. Ms. Parker, second. Ms. Peters, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Stipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Now, I believe we've already read the title into the record.
Yes.
Correct? All right. So is there a motion on that land bank purchase, or the land bank allowance on that to approve? Mr. Eckhoff, second. Mr. Smith. Okay, question.
Yeah, just the brief narrative as to when we saying lost revenue for the Kankakee Regional Land Bank that we put in place between Kankakee, the city, and the whole 9 yards. What is the lost revenue?
It's moving it from one fund to the other. That's all this is doing. If we think it's more appropriate for it to come from that fund than from the ARPA proper fund. It's an accounting move.
So, okay.
Yep. All right, roll call vote.
Yep.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mr. Raymond.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. We're close. Openings.
One opening on the Moments Pembroke Unit Drainage District number 1. One opening on the Moments Yellowhead Drainage District number 1. One opening on the Mantino Drainage District number 3. One opening on the McGilvray Special Drainage District, and one opening on the Limestone Fire Protection District.
All righty. Before we go into new business, I just wanted to say, and yesterday was a heck of a day as far as a marathon, and this guy and his staff killed it.
Yes, sir.
Dan, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, no, it was a very well run, organized, and when things pop up, I love how you guys are able to react quickly. When something doesn't work, it always happens. There's something that goes wrong, and they're all over it. So thanks again for everything.
I have a great team.
You do. You do. New business. Any other new business? Old? Other? Mr. Hess? Motion? Ms. Weber with the second. Oh, you had something?
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to have Eric Kavanaugh recognized, if he could come forward so we could take his photo. Can we do that?
Cavender?
Cavender.
Okay. Do you want your picture taken? Okay. All right.
What did he say?
He said he'll do it afterwards, right? Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Pays for radio. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other old news? Old business, new business?
Old and new, just comment. I also want to thank Dan, because I know you got a lot of calls, but I also want to give my observation of how you are integrating a lot of the young individuals into the electoral process that was down there. I saw a lot of young individuals, and I think that's great. Because now they get a chance to see the process and share with others. So
Absolutely.
Just want to have kudos to you in that area.
Well, thank you. And we've historically always reached out. We have a pretty robust high school program where we have high school students that serve as election judges. If you remember a few years ago, we had a program that we presented to actually, there was an international committee with the county clerk's office won an international award for our program, our outreach with our high school students and incorporating that with the Olivet students and won an international award for the first voter program. So,
kudos.
Yeah, we're very proud of that, and we're always happy to engage with our potential future voters. So.
So we had a motion and a second. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.